Hey guys, Alex Hamilton, YouRise Education. Today, I'd like to share a little bit more about my experience, specifically regarding my admission to Brown University's class of 2017. I hope that by doing so, I can add some transparency to what it's like to apply to top schools, so you're better informed, especially given the increasingly competitive and opaque world of admissions. I also hope that by sharing my experience, I can dispel some common myths regarding applying to top schools. Before we begin, if you like this kind of content, then be sure to give a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos like this. With that being said, let's jump into it. So first of all, let me start off with some context. I attended a large public high school of around 3,000 students, leaving between 800 and 900 in my class. Needless to say, competition was quite stiff. At the national level, during my application year, Brown had an overall admissions rate of around 9.2%. Although the early decisions admissions rate was quite a bit higher. Wishing to keep my options open, I applied to Brown during the regular decision round, as I did with all my schools. Unfortunately, I was admitted. Arguably, the biggest component of college applications is coursework and GPA. Full disclosure, I did not have a perfect GPA when applying to Brown. Though I obtained mostly A's, there were a few B's that I got during my sophomore year in courses unrelated to my major. Despite this, due to the high number of honors and AP courses that I took, I ended up being ranked 15th in my class. In total, I took 9 AP classes, which is more or less typical for students applying to top colleges, but I think what the big separator was me taking Chinese as opposed to more commonly taken languages like Spanish or French. I was also fortunate that my school had a reputation of having sent students to top colleges every year. The truth is that when it comes to college admissions, not all high schools are viewed equally by the admissions committee. Admissions officers will favor schools that they're sure have a very rigorous academic curriculum, as well as those that have a history of sending students to their institution. This isn't to say that if you don't attend such a high school that you needn't apply to these elite colleges, but rather it's going to be more of an uphill battle. Similarly, if you're studying in a nation outside of the United States whose primary language is not English, then by attending a school with an international curriculum, you can display greater competitiveness to the admissions officers. In any case, if you don't have the luxury of attending an elite high school, one of the things you can do is take extracurricular coursework, such as the courses found on websites like Coursera, or by self-studying for AP exams to demonstrate your initiative to college admissions officers. While all high schools are different, one of the great equalizers is in standardized tests. And for undergrad admissions, that typically refers to the SAT or the ACT. Though when considering students applying from both the US and abroad, the SAT is a more common test. All colleges that require the SAT will also honor the ACT and vice versa. In fact, colleges do not have a stated preference for one or the other, so I encourage you to take both if you have the opportunity so you can get a sense of which exam you do better at. For me, the state in which I lived had a heavy focus on the ACT, so that's the exam that I stuck with. Another thing is that for students submitting the SAT, some colleges also wanted to see the SAT subject test, and though I was okay with that, I really preferred the ACT for its more holistic examination style, as well as its focus on grammar above vocabulary in the English section. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the ACT, so if you're curious how that converts over to the SAT, take a look online because you'll find plenty of handy conversion charts. If you're applying to a non-test optional school and you're not a natural test taker, don't worry, because I'm not either. Colleges allow students to take exams multiple times, and they typically focus only on the highest scores achieved. This is great news because my first non-practice ACT that I took, I got a 30, which isn't really competitive for schools like Brown. However, once I got the results to that exam, I was able to see which parts I struggled with, and then, after going through the practice book, focus specifically on ironing out those weaknesses. Through practice, I was able to improve my composite score to a 35 in under a year. The good thing about taking the exam multiple times is that I was actually able to super score, taking the 36 science and English, as well as the 35 math I scored on my last exam, along with the 35 on the social studies component I scored in my penultimate exam. And if you're curious about the writing portion, don't worry. That tends not to be valued as much compared to the other parts of the standardized test. That's why they have college admissions essays. But if you're applying from a school where English is not the main language of instruction, then you may also have to take an English exam, such as the TOEFL or IELTS. In the case of the TOEFL, shooting for above a 110 on the composite score, with at least 26 in speaking, is best. So GPA and test scores are vital metrics in admissions, but another aspect through which colleges will evaluate candidates is through extracurriculars and distinctions. This is because based off of the scope or competitiveness of the organization or the award, the university can get a better sense of a prospective candidate's contributions to that university. Typically, extracurricular organizations will involve a student's contributions to academics, community service, or a subject of their interest. In my case, I covered these aspects through leadership positions in 3 clubs. These 3 organizations were Chinese Honor Society, Key Club, and a group called Awareness that I co-founded with some of my classmates and which partnered with local charities to collect donations for different groups. At the same time, I was involved in other activities such as Chinese Club and National Honor Society, and I received several school-level awards for my performance in classes, as well as national level awards such as those corresponding to AP exams. Note that you don't have to get involved with founding an official 501c3 charity for admission to a top school, but admissions officers are going to be really interested in the extent of your service and why it matters to you. So everything we talked about so far, I like to call the hardware or the quantitative aspects of one's application. There's also the software aspects of your application, which include things like your interviews, your application essays, your letters of recommendation, and your background. For letters of recommendation, colleges will often look for 2 to 3, with 2 coming from teachers who you've directly had in your classes, and maybe a third one from a counselor, a staff member, or another teacher who knows you well. You'll want to reach out to the teachers that you feel can highlight your strengths in ways that are complementary on the application. At Brown, I ended up majoring in neuroscience, but at the time, I applied as a prospective East Asian Studies major. So I reached out to my Chinese teacher who had known me for 4 years, and I requested that she write one of those letters. I had my junior year English teacher write the other letter because she could highlight my performance in her class and because she was the sponsor of the club that I co-founded. So letters of recommendation were important for teachers to showcase my strengths, but for me doing that personally, there was no better opportunity than through the essays. I think my personal statement helped me stand out because I covered a fairly unique topic, which was about the importance of aluminum recycling in my family. In this essay, I talked about themes like perseverance, which connected nicely to my identity as a first-gen college student. Meanwhile, for the Why Brown essay, I talked extensively about things that Brown provided that other schools didn't. This includes the lack of core requirements through the open curriculum, which benefits my diverse academic interests, as well as the ability to prioritize learning above letter grades. When it came time for the interview, all the school research that I had conducted about Brown made it so much easier for me to articulate my thoughts on why I wanted to attend. Typically, undergraduate interviews aren't make it or break it. They're an opportunity for you to supplement your application with additional information, and if you're an international student, showcase your English level. During my interview, I was able to build upon activities that I had mentioned in my activity list, but in greater detail, and talk a little bit more about the Why Brown things that I didn't have the chance to mention in my essays, like different courses and professors. I also researched a bit about my interviewer on LinkedIn ahead of time, just so that I can have some talking points of commonality going into the interview. As I found out that he was a doctor, we were able to have an exciting conversation about the things that I really enjoyed about the subject of biology, and was also able to ask him different questions about Brown's research environment. Remember, your interviewer is going to submit a report to the university talking about how the conversation went, so any points of commonality to make you more memorable are great. And that's mostly everything. I understand that gaining admittance to top programs like Brown can seem really daunting, but with the right approach, it's completely doable, even without early decision or having some university connections or being recruited. I didn't even have a chance to visit the Brown campus before applying, but by doing my fair share of school research and watching virtual tours, I was more than okay. Speaking of which, if you're curious to learn a little bit more about Brown, check out the tour I have up here. And also, be sure to leave a comment down below sharing what you think of videos like this, as well as asking any questions if you're curious about the topics that I discussed today. And if you find this kind of video helpful, remember to smash that like button and subscribe so I know, and so I'll keep those videos rolling. And with that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.